What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Pazza podcast. And we are back. It's a rarity and an oddity, probably now, to see both me and Vince on here together. Last week, Vince and Dave stepped up huge and filled in for me after I had an absolute beauty of a recording, only to be spared, or I guess spared's not the word, but uh, embarrassed by the fact that for whatever reason, audio didn't pick up at all. So Vince and Dave stepped in and saved the day, and I appreciate it. And now me and Vince are finally back together. Vince, how's it going?
Reunited, and it feels so good, man.
You are not lying. How are you feeling after this weekend? Or I guess after the result on Friday and then the result from Napoli yesterday.
Well, it's really hard to ask for a better weekend. I feel like after as abysmal as a month of March that we had, April's been really good to us so far.
Yeah, you're not lying. The big news came yesterday, Inter fans. I think now I'm even comfortable, and I'm sure you are, with kind of accepting and saying that the Scudetto is ours. Napoli losing 2-0 to Lazio yesterday, coupling that with Inter's 3-0 victory over Cagliari, and being, I believe, plus 12, if I'm not mistaken. Is that what we are right now, Vince?
I think that's right, yeah.
Yeah, so plus 12 with 5 match days left to go. It's pretty much sealed up at this point. So we can celebrate. We're going to talk a little bit about the game. And then, since essentially, it would take something more monumental than 5-0 at the hands of PSG for us to not win the Scudetto, we can talk about maybe what we want to see moving forward. So let's hop into this match on Friday. We are recording this on Sunday. Obviously, the Milan match is at 1-0. So we've had a couple of days to let this result simmer. The starting lineup, big surprise, something that, Vince, you've been calling for. Dave, I know, has been calling for. And I've mentioned a couple times, like, yes, we need this to occur as well. Pep Martinez starts in goal over Jan Sommer. Vince, how happy were you? Like half chub or full chub?
I was very pleased. I was I thought it's long past time for us to give Pep Martinez some more opportunities in net, and I felt like he rose to the occasion. I mean, we got to remember it is Cagliari, it's a relegation tier side. So it wasn't going to be a big test, but at the end of the day, we got to see what we have with the guy. And I felt that this type of game was a great opportunity, and I felt he showed what he could do pretty well.
Yeah, I think it was a great opportunity. The last match against Cagliari, I think they didn't have a single shot on goal. It's a low risk move by Kivu to put him in this match. We knew, I mean, I think anyone knows and knew that if Inter got a goal before Cagliari, the game was done. And we saw that in the second half. Our first goal pretty much killed off the match. Cagliari accepted defeat at that point. So very low risk move to put Martinez in, but good. Get him some confidence. Maybe we can see him, build on this and get some more match days under him, and then evaluate at the end of the season. I still think he might be gone, but who knows? Akanji, De Vrij, Carlos Augusto making that back line. So De Vrij stepping in for Acerbi, something that, I think a lot of Inter fans wanted to see. And then Augusto in for Bastoni. Reports saying Bastoni is now injured. I think that is kind of a bogus report. I think that's kind of just Bastoni obviously has something going on mentally, and he needs to take care of that along with his family. He needs to be there with his family. So I think that's, kind of like Bastoni is going to be hurt until he is ready to come back kind of deal. But it's nice that we have Augusto in there to step in. Dumfries, Barella, Hakan, Mkhitaryan, and Di Marco, and then Pio and Thuram. And it was a first half that kind of was stale, boring, lifeless, I guess maybe. It almost looked like Cagliari were the ones there fighting to create a little more space between them and the relegation line, and they seemed a little more hungry to start out. Vince, did you kind of get that same feel in the first half as well?
Yeah, it was, I guess, at least three straight games now where it seems like we come out as the weaker team and where we just have a sluggish first half, and then at halftime we lean forward, lock in, something clicks, and we figure it out from there. So, it's if the season is going to end this way, being slow starters but then finishing strong, I can live with that because it sure beats the thing we used to do where we would start strong and then just let games get away from us at the end. So it's an interesting pattern, but at the end of the day, if it brings home number 21, I'll take it.
Yeah, I think at this point in the season, we're kind of we're grasping for straws, trying to think of stuff to talk about. Because I mean, we know what this team is. We know what their limitations are. Luckily, even on their worst day, they're still probably, you could say, the best team in Serie A. So it's just about putting together that consistency, and it is sometimes a little worrying. But like you said, I mean, if it's we got the 21st Scudetto like pretty much all but wrapped up, do we really need to worry about what the performances are looking right now versus the result? Because I'm sure Napoli would have much rather yesterday looked terrible. I mean, they did, but I'm sure if they would have won 1-0, they wouldn't have cared. It's 3 points, all that matters. So yeah, should we be that concerned right now where we are in the season? That's kind of, I guess, up for debate and subjective. But Cagliari were hitting us, and all we were doing was just kind of lethargically getting up the field. And I've mentioned this a couple times, and then maybe this can build into what we were talking about or what we are going to talk about. But the need to refresh. I love Hakan. I love Turam. I love these guys, but there's limitations on their game. And if Kivu wants to play a more modern style, having a regista in there maybe isn't what Inter needs. Maybe we need that bully in the midfield that can win the ball back and let a Barella or Zielinski or whoever else maybe that midfielder is going to be in the future go to work. Turam, we talk about, or I talk about a lot, how if we can't build up through the middle, because we do want to build up from the back, you got to be direct. And Turam with his hold up play, it's just not as good as someone like Lukaku or a Dzeko. They allowed us to be more direct when it wasn't working through the middle of the field. So there's limitations to what we have. And I think it was exposed in this first half. Hakan again, I didn't get to, like I said, the audio was gone for that Como match, but against Como, he was so late into every tackle for me. Like Como, their first goal came because Hakan was late into a tackle and didn't win the ball back. And there were several moments like that. He was fouling Como because he was just going so late into tackles. And then just when's the last time we've seen a dink over the top, one of those 40, 50-yard balls from Hakan that we used to see on a regular basis? And when a team needs an outlet like that from time to time, Hakan resorted, I feel like, in the first half, just an Aslani type sideways pass time and time again. And that is what kind of concerned me in the first half. And then Pio, again, it's consecutive weeks kind of since Italy got eliminated that, I mean, is it just muscle for show? Because he gets bullied a lot of times. Now it's debatable if it's a foul or not in some occasions, but if you're as big as Pio is, you've got to be able to hold off a defender. That's kind of what you're in the team for. And that's something he needs to learn. I think we forget he's only 20 years old, battling against 30-year-old players. So it's going to take some time, but he's got to develop that moving forward. Was there anything in the first half, as far as what this team was showing that kind of worried you, and maybe something you were thinking about, like this is what needs to change moving forward going into next season, Vince?
Nothing was really giving me too much cause for alarm. Like I said, we've kind of started the last couple weeks slow and then things came together. I wanted to see if something like that would happen again, and if it didn't, then maybe we could have some of those conversations because, like you said, we've talked about some of these things before. The need for a more physical midfielder, We depend on PO clearly a lot right now because of all the injuries and out of form people we've had in the attack all year, with Lautaro out again. Um, it's honestly, we lean way too heavily on Pio Esposito already. It's kind of crazy to me that we're counting on a 20-year-old, somebody who, if Italy had made the World Cup, he couldn't even legally drink over here, and we're trotting him out to with all the injuries we've had. He's leading the line a lot of the time for us, and that's a lot of pressure. He just came back from loan in Serie B, and already he's being asked to help lead a Serie A, a Scudetto contender. Um, I feel like for the most part he stepped up to the occasion pretty well, and there were a couple weeks where he would score a goal and we would blow it, and it felt, I felt bad for him because we wasted, some of his offense that he was generating. So it's hard for me to really get on him too much lately, but I have noticed he has cooled off a little bit too. But that's how these things go. Certain players dip out of form, other players grow into form. And where we've been lucky these past few weeks where, some guys have slowed down or been out. Thuram, Barella, Dumfries are all getting hot at the right time, which was again the case this week. Barella and Thuram especially really were the stars of the second half for me.
Yeah, and that's a great segue to go into the second half. And like I had mentioned earlier, it seemed like all it was going to take from us was just one goal. Cagliari weren't going to really do anything to hurt us. They would have been happy leaving, rightfully so, the San Siro with just a point. So we needed to get that goal, and it comes kind of out of nothing. But I watched the goal back yesterday and or maybe 2 days ago, and have been thinking about it ever since. If you watch that first goal, DiMarco, and this is an underrated maybe facet of his game that I've never really noticed, but it really stuck out to me rewatching the goal. He starts, I guess, the move you could say with his pass about 10, 15 yards into his own half. So, into our own half, just into the middle third from the defensive third. He kind of starts it. And then he just jets. After he releases that pass, if you look at it, he runs on a beeline straight to the space that was open there. And that's definitely something that this coaching staff must have seen and worked on during the week. And DiMarco continued his run. Now it was maybe fortuitous how it got to him because I think Barella, there was a tackle there and it kind of just squabbled out to DiMarco, but he knew where that space was going to be and he sprinted a good 60 yards to get to that space and then another 10 yards with the ball. And then to just be able to pinpoint the pass on a silver platter to Marcus Thuram. Like Thuram honestly did his best to flub that goal. Like Caprile, it went right underneath him. If Caprile had like slid on the ground, there's nothing Caprile could have done to prevent the goal. But if he had just like tripped and fell and landed on the ground, it might have been a save. Like Thuram did not place the ball, but he didn't have to. That was the beauty of DiMarco's pass there. And that is what killed the game. Just a single moment of brilliance. And I think that's what we've relied on a lot this year that maybe has kind of like made us fan. There's been a negative connotation all season, I feel like, around this club. And it's got to be, the 5-0 loss as well. We talk about how mentally fragile these players are. Us as fans now after that too, we're mentally fragile. I mean, you go through a 5-0 defeat, the historic. I mean, it's raining on you and no one else at that point is what it feels like. Like that old whatever the Zoloft maybe commercial where it's like a little blob just blobbing around the town and the rain is just coming down on the blob. That's what you feel like after something like that. And that's just us as fans. Like the players have to be feeling this too. And we've relied on so much where it's like just moments of magic from individual where the team has kind of maybe been disjointed and struggled. Under Conte, we talked about Conte ball and how beautiful sometimes that was. Inzaghi early in his tenure, how many times would we score where it was like we're pinging passes around, Barcelona tiki-taka-esque. And we haven't seen that this season. So maybe that's kind of what we've been missing and kind of why there's been a sour tone. Vince, do you have any idea maybe, or do you want to elaborate on that? Do you agree?
So this season definitely has felt a little weird to me too. I think, like you said, a lot of it has to do with the aftermath of the catastrophe in Munich at the Champions League final. But it's more than just that. This summer we changed coaches. We didn't know how much was going to change with the roster. I mean, one of the things that factored into my Italy trip last year when we went to go see us play against Udinese is I knew this group had you know, there's there's an expiration date on this group of guys. Like it's coming up. I thought it would be last summer. More of them stuck around than I thought. Probably going to be this summer though, where we see a lot of squad changeover. A whole lot of uncertainty with the Mercado and everything. We didn't know, are we getting Lookman? Are we not? Okay, well, who are we getting? Um, Kivu's able to get a couple guys, some of which, there's did he want him or did he not? Luis Enrique and Diouf. Uh, Bonnie was a good pickup. Pio we brought back over. And the season started well. We pulled our own 5-0 against Torino, but I think it was the second week we played, coincidentally, Udinese, and we lose that game, and we drop our first three encounters, lose all three first encounters with Juve, Milan, Napoli. So we knew we had some problems with our rivals in big games, and that kind of carried forward, with the Champions League, where I believe we won our first four, if I want to say, and then lost three of the next four, dropping to Liverpool, Atletico, um, Arsenal, and then we saved it by beating Dortmund, but that wasn't enough to keep us out of the playoff, and we went to Bodo, and everything kind of fell apart. I know it was kind of a trap game. It was right after Juve, Lautaro gets hurt. So there's been a lot of, it's Forza Inter. There's been a lot of drama this season, and shoot, I didn't even mention the Club World Cup. We went out in the round of 16 to Fluminense. Like there's so many things where we're just like, oh my God, what are we doing? Like how are we? It just things didn't look great. The month of March we didn't win a game, and I know we were all very pessimistic, but then it turned around. So maybe this slow start first half, strong second half turnaround thing is kind of emblematic of the season a bit. We got to take the ups with the downs.
Yeah. And I think you said it perfectly. March was rough on us, but then it all turned around. And that is a good segue as well to what I want to talk about next. Barella also scored a golazo. Zielinski scored a golazo. Inter went 3-0. But getting back to that turnaround point, because I think the Cagliari match, like I said earlier, like we got the 3 points performance wise. Who cares? Now we need to talk about, you know, what has to be done next season. And I think the turnaround that happened towards the end of March, coincidentally, is when Lautaro comes back. That Roma match changed everything. Even though he was out after that, that spark, he was on the bench at Como. That spark that he provides, it's immeasurable. Like he is an untouchable. And then Barella, you mentioned it earlier in this podcast. Barella proved his worth. I had been questioning, you had been questioning, we all had been questioning Barella all season. But when shit hit the fan for Italy and he came back, who has been every match that guy that has been, you know, everywhere on the pitch, doing everything and dying for the badge. I think right before one of the matches in March, one of the last ones when we were going through that thing, I said, how we got to have guys that would die for the badge. It comes back to what Lautaro said in the summer. There's two people that I think, three, if you want to include, DiMarco, four for PO, but two without a doubt want to stay and fight for trophies with Inter, and that's Lautaro and Barella. We have to do everything to keep these guys as long as we can. Like Bastoni, all these other guys, fringe guys, they can come and go. Inter, we've seen Ronaldo Nazario, Ibrahimovic, these guys come and go. Top level players, Adriano, Wesley Schneider. But there was one constant throughout that whole time that wanted to stay, do whatever it took for Inter, give his body on the line, and that was Javier Zanetti, Capitano. Like we have something similar in these two guys as far as their passion and everything for Inter. Vince, do you agree?
I agree, and I'd put DeMarco in with that group too. I know, he's obviously one of the contenders here for Serie A MVP, tying or about to break the assist record. I've seen some conflicting numbers on how many he has right now, 15 or 16. But, there were times this year where I felt like he was hard carrying us a little bit too. Fan since boyhood, obviously, gets to live the dream. His work rate for me has never been in question. It's unimpeachable. The way he bombs up and down the flanks like he does. The play you described earlier, leading up to our first goal, I think that was a pretty good example of what he brings to the table. Um, there might be times when he gets tired, but I don't think that I don't really see any reason to not include him with Lautaro and Barella in that group of guys who would put it all on the line. Yeah, it's it's nice having him, and there are other players on this team that I like too, but for me, I would agree it's those three for me who represent what Inter is to me right now.
Yeah, they encapsulate that fighting spirit that every club needs to have. You look at Real Madrid and why they've been so sustainable and successful is they always have someone like that, whether it's Sergio Ramos, Danny Carvajal, even on the bench, Lucas Vasquez, he's been there for a long time. He's not the prettiest, but he stays there. He knows what that Real Madrid standard is, and he appreciates it and abides by it day in and day out. Those type of players, and I think you really get that with Barella, Di Marco, like you said, and Lautaro. And these are the players. When we talk about the core and how it's going to suck, we're gonna have to bust up the core finally. We can still continue with these three players. I think it is time now that, these other players that have been important to us, if not now, then when kind of deal. Like I see the reports and I get it, and I understand why we as fans want if Çalhanoğlu, if we can extend him for another year, keep him. Other players like Turam, Denzel Dumfries, these players that have been important for us, why we want to keep them. Mkhitaryan, I don't understand so much. But these players like this, I understand, but with how stale things have come, like I think it should be pretty obvious to everyone, like we have to make a change. The formation teams ultimately are going to figure out in Europe as well how to stifle Inter. Like you sit in a low block, we have no answer for it. And that's all it takes. Against Como, against Roma, we were able to put 9 goals against these two teams recently because they don't sit back and try and make us break them down. Under Gasparini and then Fabregas, they want to attack as well, which leaves holes. You get goals like Lautaro being sprung across by Turam because the field is stretched, like against Roma, or the goal of Turam Como, the second one, where Barella just dinks it over the top, and all Turam has to do is essentially wait for the mistake and dink it over the keeper. You get goals like that, but against Cagliari, like you see in the first half, I wouldn't say they were in a low block per se, but we struggled because they were more compact. Who's to say, Arsenal coming to us in Europe moving forward, they're not going to just sit back and make us them down if we continue to keep the players that we have. So I think there definitely is a need to move on, and it's going to suck. These guys, it's gonna maybe be, and I'm glad that we've wrapped up the Scudetto essentially when we have and how we have, so it doesn't have to go to the last match day. I feel like it's going to be, I don't know if you remember when, like, that season, the first season under Mourinho, where Figo, Crespo, I think it might have been one other, maybe like there was one other player that had been with this Vieira. had been with the squad for a while, very important pillars that we all loved and stuff, and everybody knew they were leaving, so, like, they got a cool send-off. I vividly remember Figo getting, like, thrown up in the air and, like, tossed around by the team. That's what we need to give a Çalhanoğlu and a Thuram. Let them go out on this high, winning the Scudetto, because for me, and Vince, you can butt in if you disagree. I feel like if we keep everybody again and try and do another hoorah, it's not going to end up this way that it has ended up this season. I think it'll be more like last season under Inzaghi without the European run as well. And I don't think these players deserve something like that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I know and we've talked about it before, the blueprint to beating us, it's out there. We've seen other teams employ it. Some teams with a little more quality are better at actually executing it. Um, but yeah, I think going back out there with the same group of guys that are another year older, maybe we win a Scudetto like that. Maybe. I don't know. We would have to look at what the competition for next year looks like. I know Napoli's probably going to be healthy. Is Conte going to stick around? Who knows? Is AC Milan finally going to get an actual striker and stop trying to force Leao into that central role? Who knows? No one knows what Juve is going to look like. But, I'd put us right back in the Scudetto conversation next year if we kept the same squad. But as far as a deeper European run, it's hard for me to see that. I knew going into that final, win or lose against PSG, that the European window for us, as far as deep runs is concerned, was probably going to be closing for a little bit. Because again, I knew that this roster was due for turnover. And okay, great, we got to the playoff with the current group, and obviously it didn't go well. But yeah, it's time for a refresh. And as I've always said that this particular group, it's not just the team. It's this particular group of guys on the team right now for me who are really likable. We've got, probably two or three token stars who could start somewhere else, but then other than that, it's a bunch of misfit cast-offs, grizzled veterans, guys who people would say, "Wait, he's still playing." There's a guy who was a fan of the team as a kid, the son of one of our rivals, a rival turned hero. It's a feel good story, and to see some of these guys go, it's gonna suck. Like if Bastoni goes to Barcelona, yeah, I'm gonna be heartbroken about it. But at the same time, after everything that's happened with him this season, if he wants to leave, I could kind of see it. Like we can tell that something's up with him right now. It's the World Cup qualifier. It's the Kalulu thing. He's still getting booed around Italy, which is stupid and childish because nobody ever cared about Juan Cuadrado diving like this. Um, and it goes back further. He was the one who Florian Wirtz, when we played Liverpool, dove against Bastoni and won a penalty, and we lost the game because of that. So there's a lot weighing on him. Çalhanoğlu, he's always been linked to Galatasaray. If he wants to take a victory lap there to round out his career, I think he's earned that right. And it's like Lautaro said around the Club World Cup. Those who don't want to be here, you can go. But in Çalhanoğlu's case, as much as he has contributed to this team, holding down the midfield, switching positions basically to and becoming one of the best registas on the planet. Like that's been incredibly impressive. His set pieces we're gonna miss. Nobody can hit a free kick or a penalty like he can. I mean, maybe DeMarco, but not like that. Um, so guys like that, I'm definitely gonna miss, and a lot of the old guys too have been here. Summer, as much as I've given him crap this year, he put in two pretty good years here. Acerbi pocketed Erling Haaland in a Champions League final, did it again in another Champions League run. De Vrij's been here for years. I'd even be okay with another year of De Vrij. I don't think he's reached the point where he's too old to continue, and as many holes as we're going to need to plug this offseason, I'd be fine keeping him. Uh, Mkhitaryan, I know you're not a fan, but he's been a capable workhorse, I feel like, for a good chunk of his tenure here, and I'm fine with him in that closer role. Maybe he can go on to be a coach or something. He clearly has football IQ. The one thing is I'm kind of scared to lose Marcus Thuram right now. I know we talked about how bad of a season he's had, but The fact that he's rounding into form at the right time shows me that he still has something to offer. And considering how many other needs we have to plug, I'm not really sure that we want to go looking for another attacker this offseason because we're going to have to plug gaps all over the defense and the midfield.
Yeah. The thing I would argue about Turam is it comes back to Lautaro every time. Since Conte, we had Lula, Lautaro, and Lukaku. How successful is that? Then you go Inzaghi and you have Lautaro and Dzeko, and how great that was. And then Turam and Lautaro. So there's one constant there throughout all of that, and that is Lautaro. So I think, keeping him, I think we can plug anybody. And even if we're going to change formation reportedly or whatever, it's you don't want to see these players get to the point where it was like, Handanovic was, or like people are saying Sommer, like we're souring on these players. And I think if we're going to make a change, and if Kivu wants to implement it, it has to happen this summer. And I've kind of accepted that the players that we're going to actually be keeping maybe not be players that would be the ones we'd want to keep. I think you're right in that it'll probably be Mkhitaryan and maybe De Vrij that we keep, just financially, and if you think about it logically, there's no resale value for Mkhitaryan at all. Like no one is going to buy on a 1 year, 2 year, whatever deal to bring in Mkhitaryan. No club in the world. Chalanoglu still has resale value. So if you're going to keep one, if there's even any thought of which one do we want to keep, why not sell the one that is got value still left in him? For a club that needs finances. Difference between De Vrij is he would not have any resale value. Acerbi has no resale value. So it's like, which one do you keep? And I think everybody logically would agree that, Acerbi just isn't going to fit this Kivu modern way of football. So De Vrij is the one that if we are going to keep either of the two, it makes sense to keep them. But I think, Turam, his value has skyrocketed in the last couple, maybe not skyrocketed, but definitely increased than what it was a month ago. Chalanoglu still has that value. Players like Bastoni, if we're needing money, we have to sell players like this now. We don't want to run into a situation like Davide Fratesi, where if we would have sold him, a year ago, maybe even a year and a half ago when the links first started coming out, his value would have been 10 to 12 million more than what it currently probably is. We held on to him way too long and his value diminished. So you got to get as much as you can. Dumfries is another player like that. It's like, do we move on from him now? What's the decision? And I think ultimately, why not get 20, 25 million if you can for Dumfries? And I think we need to accept as Interisti that maybe the next couple of years, it might be, we're going to be fighting for Scudetto, but we might come up empty handed. We're not going to go as deep in the Champions League. Maybe a Supercoppa and a Coppa Italiana are like the two things that, realistically we can bring home. But I think that's going to be better for the club down the line versus where we were in 2013, 2014, when we had held on to these triplete players for way too long, and then it eventually led us up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. We were relying on the likes of players like not Benacer, what was it, Belfadil and Kuzmanovic and stuff to try and fill roles that obviously weren't good enough. So now we need to start integrating some of these players. And it's also been good that Stankovic, he's gotten reportedly going to be coming back. He's gotten Champions League experience. So it's not like we're going to be bringing in, I don't think, nameless players. I think this club and hopefully Oak Tree realizes the importance of Inter being the top club in Italy. And so you have to reinvest that money. So if Bastoni leaves for 70 million, you just can't reinvest that in four Andy Doofs. Like it has to be somebody of note, a Manu Kone, or, me just fantasizing a Nico Paz, but somebody realistically on that level. Vince Is there anybody that I mentioned that you think realistically, though, that I said that we were going to move on from that you think we actually will keep a hold of? You know, Çalhanoğlu, Thuram, Dumfries, Acerbi, any of those, Bastoni, any of those players?
I could see Çalhanoğlu sticking around for another year, and if he does, I'd be okay with that personally. It all depends on him at this point. There's a lot that I feel like he does offer. Again, he's our penalty kick guy, great free kicks. Anytime we need a game unlocked, a lot of the time he's the one who finds it outside the box, at the edge of the box, and is able to just put a rocket past the keeper and kind of put us all at ease again. So I could see us extending him for another year, but you know, at the same time, I have noticed the past year or two he's getting hurt a lot more, and he's another year older. He's one of my favorite players on the team. I have his jersey. Like, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to him at all. I'd love to keep him, but it's do you want to like you were saying with like the tripleta players who stuck around as long as they did? Like, do we want to see him go that route? Like, no, I'd rather remember him fondly. So it kind of depends on what he wants to do. Turam at this point, I could see sticking around. Um, Other than that, like I said, DeVry, who again, I think that I asked Dave last week if he thought DeVry would be better in Kivu's back line than Acerbi. And I feel like the game against Cagliari Friday kind of showed that, yeah, he can do it a little better. I know they're not exactly they're not world beaters, but I felt like DeVry had a pretty solid showing, and considering how many holes we need plugged, I'd be fine with him sticking around. For me, everybody else I would put at a pretty high chance of leaving. Cherby's he's going to be gone. Mkhitaryan probably gone. I could see us keeping him. I don't know if I would agree with that, but uh, yeah, I mean, at his age, like he could retire at any minute. Dumfries has been talking about the Prem or he's been linked to the Prem at least for a couple years now. Heck, I know a couple years ago we were talking about is there anybody we could replace him with? I know the can't remember which season that was, but at one point he was the weakest player in our starting 11, it seemed like, and now it's who are we going to replace him with? Bringing in a Palestra would be great, but is that going to happen? We don't know. As fans, we've noticed that our markets, our mercado, the past couple of years, it's always been pretty unpredictable and pretty underwhelming. And don't get me wrong, we've hit on some pretty great players in the past. Thuram came on a free. Çalhanoğlu, I believe, came on a free as well. Multiple players we brought in for nothing, and were able to win trophies with them. Incredible piece of business with the Onana as well. That helped a lot. Um, so yeah, I see there are a lot of players I think are probably leaving. I think Bastoni, again, like him a lot too, but he's probably gone. Dumfries, I think it's becoming increasingly likely. I think a lot of the midfielders, Fratese's almost certainly gone, Mkhitaryan, uh, and then at least two defenders. I mean, Darmian's probably gone too. We haven't even mentioned him yet, and he's somebody who's can cover multiple roles on that right flank. But yeah, I think like you said, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty, and we're going to have to see where the next few years take us. It's going to be really hard to predict. Can we contend? Yeah, I hopefully still think so, but we don't know what we don't know. And for now, I'd rather, we can talk about this, and I enjoy talking about it too, but I also want to live in the moment a little bit here. Like, we got to remember what we got with this group, and while they're still here, I think it's really cool that it looks like we're going to be able to send those who are leaving off on a really good note.
Yeah, I agree. It's like that Figo under Mourinho. Like players like that, you deserve to ride off into the sunset with a medal around your neck. I think it was Zanetti's last season, Kivu and Cambiasso. I think they finished like eighth or ninth. and all these guys like they're walking off the pitch last game. They say, "Yeah, like, we're applauding you," but it's like, man, how shitty of it is that they're staying here this long. They love the club, and like they're in ninth place playing alongside Nagatomo and Kuzmanovic. Like, I don't want that to happen to these players. I want us to send them off, and I want the players that are going to stick around to be able to usher in a new era for Inter. And I think that's only possible by you have to do it this summer, unfortunately. So I think that we will see some of our favorites leave, and it's going to be a weird summer, and we're going to be seeing so many of those stupid reports every day of, this player is close to reaching an agreement with such and such club. Inter is going to sell them for, peanuts. And I just urge everyone to relax and wait until everything is official. I'm going to try my best this summer as well. All these reports that are coming out, they're overwhelming and it'll get your blood pressure raised. And then ultimately, what happens is completely different than what Fabrizio Romano is saying. So let's wait until everything's official before we start jumping ship on anything. But the last thing I want to talk about before we move to the upcoming match as well is Kivu under with this squad. And I am a person that, I appreciate the work Kivu's done. I think, this season winning the Scudetto was big after that 5-0 drubbing. He's helped a lot, with the mentality of some of these players getting back to maybe where they enjoy football a little more than what they did in the summer after the whole debacle and with Inzaghi leaving and stuff like that. But I'm also in the camp of I don't think Kivu is an elite coach or tactician. And if it's something that, they're saying it's pretty much all done and dusted, Kivu is signing his extension. But I mean, if there's a coach out there that is a world-class coach that would be willing to go to Inter, you can't just be like, all right, it sucks, but this is how business works. Like you gotta inevitably go with the world-class option. And if that was Simeone in the summer, I would jump ship and go immediately after him. Now, I don't think realistically at this moment with his wage and everything that would occur, but I'm playing hypotheticals here. I think you have to go because he can do things that Kivu can't. He can bring more out of the squad than I think Kivu can. And if we're talking about bringing in some different players, you need a coach with experience that knows what players he needs to fit his system. And it's unclear if Kivu understands what players he needs to fit his system. So I think that is also a big debate as well, or maybe a hypothetical debate, because if it is true that he's pretty much signed his contract extension, this conversation is useless. But Vince, where are you at on the Kivu train?
So I agree that he's got a lot of room for growth, but I like what we've seen from him. I know, like I've said before, when his name first came up, he wasn't my first pick, but the more I thought about it, the more okay with it I was. Again, Inzaghi, he had his faults clearly. Pretty stubborn, which is funny as adaptable as the formation, not the formation, but as the way our players move around on the field under Inzaghi. It's interesting that he himself has so little flexibility in terms of substitutions, starting lineup decisions. If he could play the same 11 guys every 3 days, he would. Um, or at least that's how it felt. Whereas Kivu, you see there's a lot more trust in other players. He's more willing to give other guys a shot, including the youngsters. And I think that's a pretty good that made him a pretty good idea in my opinion because, we've given guys like Pio Esposito a great opportunity this year, and for the most part they've stepped up to the occasion. Um, so, having somebody who's worked with our youth sector before, I think that's a good idea, especially, this focus on getting more younger players, the under 23 team, trying to develop more talent in-house. I think Kivu's a great guy for that. Um, and I feel, like we've said, he did a great job of getting the team's head back on straight after a pretty dismal ending to the last campaign. And I feel like, his first year, as much instability as there's been, or as much uncertainty as we've had, the fact that he's on the cusp of a potential domestic double, I think, says a lot. You know, we can talk about the state of the league, but you can't control your competition. You can only control what you can. And, I'd say taking all of that into account, I would probably grade his season right now as either a minus or B plus. Depends on how heavily you weigh Champions League as an objective this year. I do think we needed to beat Bodo and go a little further. So going forward, it's hard for me to, not knowing what the roster is going to totally look like next year, it's hard for me to say we need to make it to this round of the Champions League. It's hard for me to say that, but I do think next year the objective has to be winning some more of these rivalry games and going a little deeper in Europe. And we did see, the our second encounters with Napoli, Juve, Milan. For the most part, they went better than the first ones. I mean, Milan notwithstanding, but the team was extremely injured that game. I don't think we had Lautaro, Thuram, a few other guys might have been missing. Um, Napoli, we were able to draw them the second time. Probably could have beat them if somebody remembered to mark McTominay. We beat Juve in controversial fashion, but we beat them. Um, so yeah, all things considered, I think Kivu's the guy right now. Simeone's just not going to take a pay cut, so I don't
Yeah.
really entertain that personally.
Yeah. I think the thing that scares me with Kivu the most is like I said, we don't really know what we have with him, I guess, tactically. It feels a lot like this season. There's been some changes implemented, but for the most part, the squad's the same, the formation's the same, the system, maybe a tweak here or there, but it ultimately feels the same, especially now, with all of our set piece stuff on offense, and then now utilizing Dumfries as kind of like that guy on the back post, very Inzaghi like. So it feels very much like almost a continuation, which is why I'm hesitant because if we are going to blow things up this summer and a revolution and Kivu is going to be the manager during this, you're pretty much entrusting that you trust what his system is going to be and that the players that he's going to bring in will fit that system. And if it doesn't work out, uh, then where are you at as a club? We're entrusting the transition now to something different with a manager who before the season only had 13 games with Parma. Like it's worrisome or it's unnerving, I guess, or I'm anxious about what that brings because say in December of next season, after we've done a revolution and Kivu's brought in his players, we're sitting in eighth place and you fire Kivu. So does that mean you undergo another revolution the next season? With a manager like Diego Simeone or somebody like that, there's stability. The proven track record, their system works. They're going to bring in players that will fit their system. Same with Antonio Conte. Like that's why you bring in that type of manager because he can get the most out of these players. So that's the only thing with Kivu that worries me is that if we're going to undergo this revolution, bringing in Stankovic potentially and other players we've been linked with. What if they actually don't work out in Kivu's system or with Inter? Like, then where are we at? So that's why I'm worried. But again, like you said, we should live in the moment right now and enjoy that, we are going to win this Scudetto this season. So I think that's really all that we need to touch on as far as, what we need to or would like to see moving forward. We can now talk about the only competition that there's a question mark about left for Inter, and that's the Coppa Italia. We play against Como. I think that's a Tuesday match
Hmm.
against Como, and then the subsequent game is at Atalanta and Lazio, and the other semifinal will be on Wednesday. So the third match against Como in about a month. This is coming after we beat Como two match days ago now 4-3. Drew them earlier in the last Coppa Italia leg. Como are on a free fall right now. They haven't won in three of their last matches, tying Udinese, losing to us, and then losing to Sassuolo. Fabregas, it feels like the wheels might be coming off of his project right now. and is right in front of him. He had top four sealed, and now they're pissing that away. And really, Coppa Italia, you could argue both ways. Either this is the only chance for them to get any glory this season, or they need to just throw this match and focus on the league to try and get top four because it's looking very bleak for them right now with Juve emerging, Atalanta, Roma, these clubs also fighting for that. What do they need to do? And so it's an interesting matchup for Inter going in, especially more so than Como, I guess. How worried are you for this match upcoming on Tuesday, Vince?
So, pretty comfortable. I wouldn't say I'm confident or worried. I kind of know that, with the league, the primary objective only 4 points away, I know that we're going to be fine either way. So, in a way, I kind of think we can approach this game. We're playing with house money, really. Whatever happens, happens. I don't think the pressure's on us. Kind of to what you were saying, I think the pressure is all on Como to figure out, what do they want to do? How do they want to approach this game? And it helps that the game's also at the San Siro. So there's a lot working in our favor here, and you know how this group goes. When it's low pressure, that's when we're at our best. So I don't want to say we're going to cruise by them or anything because Como are a good squad. Let's not get that twisted. They're having some bad form, but I think there's a really good chance we do beat them. Don't know what the scoreline's going to look like. On paper, it's probably going to be the hardest game we have left. I haven't looked at Como's schedule. I don't know who the rest of their opponents are. I know Napoli's in there somewhere, but I think, yeah, I feel pretty good about it. I know at this point, it's if we get a Copa 2, that's going to be icing on the cake. It would be great to get a double. I hope we do, but if Como are able to show us up, it's let them whatever. We'll be fine.
You say that now, but I guarantee on Tuesday, if we're down 2-0, you're gonna be collapsing mentally and melting at your seat over how fragile these guys are.
I'll stew on it for like a day and then I'll be fine. I'll remember we have Torino next weekend, so we'll
Yeah.
we'll take what did we beat them 5-0 last time?
Yeah.
We'll
But that
take
was
our
when
anger out on them.
they had Aslani last time, This time it might be a little more difficult.
Okay. Well, okay. Maybe it's something to keep us a little focused. All right.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think the squad now, with Serie A all about wrapped up, they understand what the task at hand is here. And I mean, but also on the same token, that also has been a weakness for Inter. Like, you walk in and it's like, hey, we know what we have to do. And then how many times have they shit the bed when that happens? So I could see it going either way. I do think Inter are the better squad. We have the better players. We can win in so many different ways, whereas Como have to beat you, essentially breaking you down. I don't think Kivu's going to allow those counterattacking goals this match like happened in that last match day. So I think we're going to, eliminate that. So Como's really only going to be able to beat us by breaking us down. And I think we excel against teams that try and do that and hitting them on the counter. So I could see us winning uh 2-0 or something like that. Just pray to God it does not go to kicks because if it
Yeah, no
does, then
penalties.
then we know we know what's going to happen if it goes to kicks. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's really all we have left to play for. Essentially, I think we have to get 3 points in a draw, so one win and a draw in Serie A to seal the title. So the Coppa Italia is really all that's left to play for. So I think the guys will hopefully show up, and I don't think Kivu will rotate. If he does, maybe it'll be Martinez in goal again. But other than that, I could see us playing our strongest lineup we have
At
and
this
going out
point, I
there
would
and
actually, if I could cut in for a sec, at this point, I would say just play Pep Martinez the rest of the year. If we
yeah,
can find
I
out, if we can find out now if we need to go spend on a goalkeeper, I mean, let's take that opportunity. League just about wrapped up. Pep is showing up well when he plays. Play him in Copa. Let him finish out the league run. Maybe get some or one or two more token starts in there, whatever. But at this point, we gotta. It's now or never if we're gonna see what we have from Pep Martinez. So now's the
agreed.
time to
And
do
so
it.
Yeah, putting him in a high stakes semifinal Coppa Italia match. I mean, that's a good test. So against a Como side who, has a couple goals in them from time to time. So I think you're correct. I think we need to go with Martinez and see what we have there and hopefully, move on to the final. And I think that is going to pretty much wrap it up with us for this episode today. Vince, do you have anything additional that you want to add to this brilliant conversation?
No, that'll do it for me. It's been a great month of April, great spring for us, and it's looking like we're destined for some pretty bright things here. I think we're going to be pretty happy here in a couple weeks.
Agreed. I think I have already started celebrating. I had a few more beers than I would like to have yesterday, but I mean, when I saw they lost 2-0, yeah, that pretty much that did it for me. So why not at that point, I'm sure you did the same, Vince, when you saw that result.
Yeah. It's now we got to start saving up now. I'm already thinking about saving up now for budgeting for the next year's shirt, which looks like
Yeah.
it's going to be an absolute beauty, by the way. I think you saw what I put in the group chat earlier.
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of that 07, 08 Centenario home kit with the collar. Absolutely love that kit. And if it can have the Scudetto patch in the middle, it's just gonna make it all better. Yeah, I'm getting that kit without a doubt. I'm not as big of a fan of the away kit that's been leaked as everyone else kinda is, but the home kit, I'm gonna get, the most expensive one, and who knows? I don't know what name I wanna get on the back, but, honestly, I don't think you can go wrong with a Lautaro at any point, so that's probably what I'm gonna go with, and, yeah, it's gonna be great. I can't wait for that, but yeah, I guess that's gonna do it for us today, guys. Thank you for joining. Also, I am on the Interjections podcast this week as well, so give that a check out, guys. Talk to those guys there. As always, it's great to be on there with them and get a little debate panel going back and forth. So check out Interjections podcast, and I'm the guest on this week. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. And as always, Forza Inter.